Welcome to the Unzip Mind podcast. My name is Nick Smith. I'm here with Greg Minicus and Dylan Jessen.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome, guys.
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
shouldn't really
back.
be welcoming you. We are literally like in your place.
We are all welcome.
Yeah. Well, I feel very welcome, but I can't really welcome anybody. Welcome to my presence.
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
stoked to be recording again. We have a big announcement, too. We are moving towards, from now on, every Monday.
Weekly.
Every
Weekly.
Monday.
Unzipped Mind Monday.
Which we, of course, should have been doing from the first place. 'Cause
Yeah.
It just feels better, man. Like, let's just get together and every week let's have something to talk about. Like I kind of like the 7. Maybe I'm conditioned by society, but I kind of like the 7-day like chunks. It feels right to me.
It feels right.
Maybe the
Yep.
weekend is like a creation of sort of like factory kind of like 5 days a week work.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm invested in it.
I'm excited, and we're excited to do this for you guys too. For everybody listening, because now instead of waiting 2 weeks to listen to an hour-long episode, you guys, it's a lot. You know that.
Everybody needs a little help on Mondays.
Yeah. Like let's all start our weeks together.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Get me through that week.
That being said, our topic today is a pretty heavy one, pretty serious one. We're gonna talk about trauma and kind of trauma specifically, secondary trauma. Relating kind of to we work in mental health, and there's a lot of different careers that are affected by this. I believe really. I mean, you think about mental health, EMTs, police officers,
First responders.
Yes.
first responders.
Yeah.
A lot of people are exposed to trauma. I mean, anybody who works like an industrial situation may have seen accidents. And like those things can be really traumatic, whether you experience it yourself or even just seen it.
Yeah. Trauma in general in the workplace.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So with that in mind, you guys, like we understand this is like a really sensitive topic. So we are going to present it like as graciously as possible. Right. And, at any point in time, if it is too heavy, or if, what we're talking about is striking a really specific chord, no offense, just hit that skip button.
Yeah, no offense taken.
Take enough of that. And in the show notes for you guys too, for everybody and anybody who needs it, we will be having attached some hotlines and some help and some assistance.
Yep.
So, if you need anything, we're all here. We're all in this together.
Yep.
We are all one people. So, everybody's going through a little bit of something, and somebody needs some help every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we'll have resources in the show notes. And with this, we always do, but for this one especially.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is re-traumatize, Purpose of this, and again, to reiterate, we are not licensed professionals. This is not a therapy podcast.
Yeah.
We just commonly talk about things we have been through in life or still go through. And our hope, and we do have guests on that are licensed, and our hope with any of our episodes that people take what they need, and hopefully we're able to help on some level, just kind of bringing up these tough discussions and topics.
We talk a lot about sort of struggles that we have in the workplace, but this is going to be a pretty personal episode where you're going to be talking about struggles you've had in real life. And, when I say real life, in your personal life.
Yeah.
Because, we want, those are both aspects of ourselves. We have our work selves, and then we have everything that happens outside of work. And like the way that we do this podcast, just together talking as friends and coworkers, like we can't separate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this all got brought up, at least for me, as an idea. This book was given to me by Sarah Paul's facility, really, and it's called Trauma Stewardship, and it's basically talking about how us in our field or similar fields are exposed to trauma and how it affects, and it ties into what we talked about on our meditation episode and with nurse practitioner Sarah Paul on alternative treatments, is like how trauma is stored in the body as well. It's not just in our psyche. And I remember one point on there was the more that we identify with, like, say, for example, the patients, whether it's our addictions and we're dealing with ones that are getting sober, or whether it's psych, whether I've had my bouts of depression, I've had my dark thoughts, and so I relate a lot to patients that are going through those roads. And the more that we identify with what we're doing or the people we're working with, the more likely we are to incur trauma as well, secondarily.
You just said the word. There is a term. I am not that familiar with it. Secondary trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the central topic of this episode. I don't fully understand it, so don't expect too much of me. But it's the idea of trauma in the process of being exposed to people who are themselves traumatized.
Yeah.
Either going through trauma in that moment, witnessing trauma happening in real time, someone being traumatized, or just being in contact with someone who is deeply traumatized. Like, it hurts me when I'm in the presence of someone who is hurting.
Well, it's like, and speaking on that too, like not only in the gut, but like going back to what you were just talking about too, is like, in our bodies, like we all have those moments too, with like not in that exact moment, like that gut feeling, like you're talking about, it's sickening, right? And like, it's hard to catch your breath.
It is.
But when you're living with that stress for an extended period of time, like, your back, like you're sore, and you're like, what is it? You think it's your
Tension,
mattress,
muscle
or you
tension.
think, muscle tension. You hold it in your body,
Your neck, yeah.
and it makes you become more uncomfortable. And then you become, some people they lash out with anger because they're uncomfortable and they're in pain, and it's unexplainable because it's not like a pain like you hit your shin and it's like, yeah, okay, I'm bruised because I hit my shin. You're bruised emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, just in general, that our body, our most recent episodes, we talked about that, or our guests have talked about that, and I never really saw that correlation, I guess, or like really looked at that correlation. I think about even my sleep, right? That I can't sleep at night, and it's common for me and for a lot of years, but I can tell you, before I started working in our field, I don't remember having that problem with sleep. It's only been the kind of last handful of years, and I wonder if that is apart from that. What gets me thinking differently on that is that even you talk about overanalyzing, right? Dylan and I, we've talked about that a couple times, and I know how I've mentioned like not being able to turn it off, kind of, especially working in our field so long and in crisis so much, that I'm curious if that plays into it, right? Which, because of horrible situations that have happened on the unit, or experiences that we've had, or people we've seen in such horrible distressed spots, that is an underlying traumatic event that plays into these behaviors that we adapt.
You work a lot, bro.
I do. I put in a lot of hours there in 10 years.
Mostly on the highest intensity situations. Like, if there's a tough unit, you're usually on it, right?
Yeah, and we've got different. I guess what gets me thinking about it more too is when we have more of the medical side. Like, I've worked on psych so long. A lot of us have, but when we had days like we've had recently where you're seeing 3 to 4 seizures between 3 different patients. Yeah. And that's hard to watch. That's hard to watch, and
it is,
and feel like there's not a lot you can do. There's, of course, we respond initially medically, and there's things we can do but we always call 911, right? And they come and send, but it's not like a behavior to help manage whether we're verbally de-escalating or what. It's seen some pretty traumatic events that triggers, at least for me, previous traumatic events that I've seen or been through. And all of that bundled together gets me think maybe that's why I analyze so much, or I am so anxious at nights now, or I am so, because I'm in this constant state of trying to make order of chaos,
So you, I'm not sure what your history in therapy is. You don't have one, right? You have not been in therapy?
No.
So you went to Sarah Paul's clinic, Vital Area Wellness.
Yep.
It's a beautiful place that I hope to see soon. That we probably we'll see in the next 2 weeks.
Check out our latest episode.
Yeah.
For information on her. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, just a little plug.
I was the last guest. And so you went there and you had a session with
kind of an
one of the
informal
counselors
session, both talking about
you sat down with. It was like, I think it was initially to be
sit
informal.
down with, and it did, and it became more of a it's with Christina, who's great there, and she's one therapist, and talked a lot about why I even started this podcast, and waves of life I'm going through right now in these recent months, and like a lot of processing I'm doing, and so a lot of kind of work stuff came up, and she gave me this book, called Trauma Stewardship, which it ties so many things together that I never thought might be tied together.
Sorry, go on.
No, go.
Tied together your experiences with is it stuff about the body that specifically spoke to you? Like
No, not
like
stuff about
physical sensations.
I guess to be clear, talk to me a few years ago. I've never had trauma in my life.
Oh, right.
I've always been like stronger, I would feel, in my mind. So I had this like
strong enough that you didn't, that all those things that you went through,
that I wasn't as affected as other people would be, and so I had
affected enough to call it trauma.
Correct. Yeah.
Sorry,
I mean, or
yeah,
to feel that
cut
it
you
was
off.
trauma, I guess.
Sure.
Until things come up in my life that now looking at it with a different lens, not saying this whole book is what changed all that, but just these previous months kind of looking at it with a different lens that, oh, this is derived from a traumatic event that I had in my life. And even if I don't feel that way, it's because I put up this kind of block, this shield, this numbness that transfers to my work, that transfers to everything. And it's a protectant, I believe, you know.
May I interject real quick?
Please. Yeah.
And just because like it's we just hit that part where we've all discussed it, where it's like that question before you really want to ask it before you're like, oh shit, this topic's gonna change. So I do have a question, but one thing I do want to say, so our listeners know too. What Nick's referring to is a book. It's Trauma Stewardship, and it's a guide for caring and self-care. While what we do and caring for others. So like what we were just referring to is like referring to like first responders and hospital care and people who work in the field that we work in with mental health. It's by Laura Van Dernroot. I hope I really enunciated that correctly. Lipsky. And so that's what we're talking about.
This isn't a plug, by the way. It's
No.
a total natural. Just
Yep. I
read
just
this book and
want to make sure, we're informing people and giving due diligence and credit to the people who deserve the credit. But back to my question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So side note,
Yeah.
back to my question. So Nick, with that trauma, and this is coming from like a person, because I empathize with a lot of that, because I'm going through something similar. Do you feel like you didn't view what you went through in your past and everything? Because like an outsider, like from Greg's question too, and that's where this is stemming from, is like an outsider looks at some stuff that you've told me. It's like, that's trauma.
yeah.
That's an imprinted traumatic experience. Were you rationalizing it as like, this is what everybody goes through, so you don't see that? Do you see this as like, this is just kind of life?
Yeah.
This is what all families are dealing with. So I just gotta pull my pants up. This is fine. I have nothing to bitch about, and I just gotta keep on moving on.
Yeah, just
Mm-hmm.
grit your teeth and bear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it felt normal to me. Normal now. I mean, just to give an example, I don't remember if I mentioned it before in our Stigma episode, but I used to live when my mom and dad split when I was 6.
Mm-hmm.
From then on, it was a whole hoarder situation, horrible living environment, to my mom's, which was the complete opposite, more on kind of almost the OCD kind of level, clean, week on, week off, week on, week off, until I was 15, until my dad passed. But to me, that was normal. Like, to me, that was, not outside the realm, I guess. I don't know. And then that's when it kind of started my mind. Just when my dad passed, like, I didn't even really cry. I couldn't cry. And then I couldn't cry until a couple years ago, when I had, for sure, a traumatic kind of event happen. And through all that time was just this block, this numbness, I guess.
Yeah.
I think where it's blown my mind more is that I am on so many levels such an emotional person.
Yeah.
I think that comes from, we talked about being a Cancer and just like,
Cancer.
but I am so emotional on some levels, but felt, I guess, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I didn't equate it to actual trauma until things like, even with my relationship now, it's incredible relationship with Haley, and it's the healthiest relationship I've ever had.
Yeah.
But still, I have these emotions come up, or we've had these waves to ride because of my trauma and because of how traumatized I've been in my previous relationships, almost every single one. Wow. And that's not my fault, you know.
No,
and
it's
just learning how to communicate and navigate that.
Yeah. Well, actually, though, if she cares about you, which she clearly does, then she is grateful to help you work through those waves of trauma.
Oh, absolutely. She's wonderful. She's great. But it's I've got to be willing. I've got to like understand and have that like perception that things that I've experienced, traumatic things, aren't my fault. But it's the understanding also that things are going to happen that may trigger that trauma response. Like, I mentioned a few years ago, I was able to open up emotionally like a lot more and had a traumatic event. And a good friend of ours that we worked with for at least we worked with for several years and helped train Dylan. I know when he started was, he was the best verbal de-escalator I've ever seen. He was the best. He was a really solid guy. And
one of the best human beings.
Very, very special human being.
Yeah. And he took his own life almost exactly 2 years ago. And it's a big reason why I started this podcast, big reason why I wanted to do more in mental health. But what I've realized through that, I mean, that was the first time I had cried in like 15 years and back to back to back. And since then, it's like opened this kind of emotional, I don't want to say waterfall in a sense, but you know what I mean? Like it's opened that door for me.
The floodgates.
Yeah, the dam. I had a therapist, like just a visual additive to what you're saying, right? Because I can relate to that dam part, right? And it's that emotion aspect, and as addicts and recovering addicts too, we fucking hate emotions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because the waterfall, and for some reason we always relate emotions to some aquatic feature, right? I feel like that's interesting. That's just an interesting side note, ADHD side note,
like a wellspring of emotion.
Yeah. So he related it to I had a wonderful therapist when I was at school, and he related emotions, my emotions at least, so relation to you, to a dam and the floodgates. Where, if the floodgates are never released on a dam, right? The water's just going to keep rising until it reaches over. And that's where, as addicts, we have blowouts. And we're like, we're either super down and crying and weeping and we're trying to find drugs to get over that, or we're super pissed, right? And we can't control that. And it's that flood is just coming over until the dam has enough water where it's not flowing over, right? And then there's continuous more outbursts because that dam is at a continuous top point, right? We can control those flood dams. We're the operators of the dam, right? So like visual, if you visualize it, if you like close your eyes and visualize like operating that dam for yourself, you control where your emotional water level's at, right? Yeah. So you control where your emotion stability is at, and you can open that dam when you need to release that energy and when you need to release that sadness or whatever's going through you, and you can close that gate when it's the time, right? When it's the appropriate time, when you're like, I got shit to do. I can't deal with this right now. I'm going to deal with it later. I'm going to close my gate. I'm not going to open this right now. And then when I'm in my space, when I can actually fully process this, I'm going to open that gate up and let it go.
I could imagine that once you've been triggered by something that reminds you of an old trauma, you can't turn the dial on the dam, that it's like it's open whether you want it open or not. So I'm saying that sounds like, all I'm saying is like that is a powerful visual. It sounds like a good technique, but I wonder if that would be hard for you.
Well, what I think about that with that analogy is like, say with those controls, say if you're not using those controls to be able to open and close that, over time, they might not work when you press that button.
Oh yeah,
100%.
And I think like getting in the habit of communicating, since that stuff that's inside of you keeps those controls working properly so that you can open and close that.
The maintenance.
That's what I thought.
The maintenance of it, and it's a practice too, and that's where what's important, right, is having your tools and having that the therapeutic part, right? Because like Greg, on that point, I don't think you're wrong at all.
Yeah.
Right, like if you have an emotional trigger response to something, that is your body's built-in coping skill to that. that's
again,
where therapy comes in.
cortisol, like it's
Yeah.
Exactly.
once it's happened. It's
Once
happened.
you're going, you're going.
Yeah.
But that's where therapy comes in, right? You work through those traumatic
Mhm.
experiences. That way you do become the operator of
Yeah.
your dam.
Yeah, can I actually just add to that? Therapy, I have always viewed CBT, especially therapy, as cognitive behavioral therapy, as mental training. Like it is. I mean, it's not just that. It's also having a healthy relationship with
Yep.
a caring person. With my brother taught me this. He's in school to be a music therapist, and he taught me a phrase recently: unconditional positive regard.
Ooh.
I've not heard of it, but that's apparently sort of the general orientation of a therapist in the therapy context. Like
Nice.
you're always a positive helping friend.
Yeah.
Positive. I mean, a friend, the friendship can be complicated when it comes to therapy, but always a positive, supportive person. And so with training with a therapist, so there's that aspect, but then also cognitive behavioral therapy especially is a lot of training. Good mental training, man. I love CBT. I love that it's like a new treatment modality, but I think it does train you to do things like, well, actually, I think it's for you maybe specifically that that floodgate analogy really seems to work for you. Like that's a powerful image for you. Like, you
100%.
identify with it, right?
100.
Yeah.
I definitely that, and like, so in that context too, and something that relates to like what you and I have a lot of belief in, and something that you and I relate very much to, and it's come up in several conversations, is our attachment with the natural world.
Hell yeah.
Right? So you take that analogy, okay, and then I take where I operate, right? Where my best operation happens is when I escape in the woods. And I say escape because I do. I'm escaping from this bill world. I'm escaping from the exterior stimuli that's around me. That's not allowing me to go inside, to be my operator. And when I go out in the woods, and when like I'm when I'm out backpacking, or when I'm out in the river, or whatever I'm doing, that's when I can sit with myself, and that's when I can really process the experiences, or process what's going on.
Yeah. I've had the same experience for sure, that like I just find myself, I'm in the woods and I'm like, now I'm totally lathered in sweat. Like I don't even feel like the separation between me and the air anymore. Like I just feel really good. I just start thinking about an issue that I had been very conflicted and like torn up about, and I'm thinking very clearly.
And let me ask you, Dylan, do you ever avoid going in the woods for that reason? Like
sometimes.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that question.
Because you don't want to process, or you like don't want to know the answer. Like,
oh shit. Yes and no. There's times when I know I need to go to the woods, and there's things that hit me, or there's something that might come up where I'm like, whoa, I need to get away, and I will have a wall. Like you feel it, right? I'll have this wall that I know I need to go through. And there are times where I'm like, oh, this is gonna suck, and I will take my time dealing with it the best I can say, because like I don't want to, and that's kind of where I'm at right now in life. And talking about dealing with our traumas and dealing with stuff, and not realizing something's a trauma, or not necessarily realizing it, but like not wanting to face it and holding it within ourselves. Is something I'm going through right now, and that's for the exact reason I didn't want to address it. And now it is affecting my life, right, in a very negative way. But then the outcome is going to be very positive, and that's the beautiful thing. Is like trauma does imprint on us, and trauma does suck, right? It's trauma for a reason, and it affects us physically, it affects us emotionally, it affects us mentally, and it affects parts of our lives. It affects relationships in our lives. It affects how we operate, and it can change from day to day too. There's days where our imprinted trauma doesn't show up. There's days where all it does is feels like you are either failing, or you are in this state of hyper awareness or hypersensitivity, and
disassociated.
And you're and you just want to be. Right. So you're not there, and your connections aren't there, and then you feel like, then you get down. Personally, I get in this wormhole, and I'm like, well, I could have had a better conversation like that, or I could have answered in this way, or, you know what I mean? And then you start apologizing for shit you don't need to apologize for.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's good to go on this inward journey. That's part of it. A good therapist will guide you through that. But also, one thing you mentioned, Nick, is that you often process your trauma partially through talking to Haley.
Mhm.
And is it Haley specifically? Is she the first person that you've really kind of like opened up to this degree?
No, I mean, well, yes.
Okay.
And a lot of that's been, kind of situational. It's came up, and it's, I've learned it's just better to talk about that. And why I even like brought that up as a question to Dylan is I think about writing. That's usually I always say I write the best when I'm in kind of like crisis mode or like in that, but that's not what it is. I just think that's when I'm forced to write, and I do. But I think that's my way of processing, but I commonly don't. And I think because subconsciously I don't want to process it, or I don't want to, I don't want to know the answer, and so I just think that's interesting, and I think that's why I've kind of avoided on a lot of levels, is because I'm avoiding dealing with it, and it's like there was a point in the book about like addictions, right? We obviously we're predisposed to addictive behaviors, and like, I've seen in my life, even with like gambling, I get so attached to it, or it could be something as simple as my energy drinks that I drink every single day, but I think something that I didn't really think about or really analyze recently is like with work, we're so comfortable in a crisis environment. That's when I do my best work. That's when it's like fluid, but what if I'm just addicted to those moments because I don't want to slow down and I don't want to actually process and like think about the negatives in my life, that's the only way to like work through trauma specifically and work through behaviors that we adapt to avoid or negative coping mechanisms,
So
Takes work, to face them. Takes work.
I think where we're at right now too is a really good spot because what you just said was really impactful, and I think really something to sit with too, because we have something we run our way with. So that being said, I think now is a really good time to like let everybody know, like next week, we're gonna come back to this.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's so much to unfold here.
Yep.
So right now, if you guys want, if you like what we talk about, if you want to hear more, hit that subscribe button. Not only does it help us out, it will, tell you when we release an episode every Monday, because that's what we're coming into. So we're going from bi-weekly to a weekly drop every Monday.
Yep.
And again, follow us at the Unzip Mind, and you can check out any of our merch and head over to our website at unzipmind.com. And then Greg, you have anything you wanted to say too?
No, I mean, I appreciate both of you. I mean, you especially, Nick, opening up today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of difficult stuff. This is a heavy episode. Like we're all feeling it right now. It's good. Like we're just feeling our feelings with each other, and like
Yeah, appreciate you hearing me out.
we all kind of have a shared trauma with our friend's death that you were talking about. But so yeah, I mean, we'll keep it going in the next episode. Like if you like us and you like hearing what we have to say, like you can tune in for the next one, because I know this is heavy stuff, but like this is also real people like really being vulnerable. So we're gonna continue this.
Yep. So again, head over to unzipmind.com. You can get to all of our platforms, or just head over to Buzzsprout. That's where all of our material is. And again, if you guys want to pick up a hoodie or a t-shirt, we design all of our own merch. It really helps us and supports us and helps us put this content out. So,
Cool. Thank you guys.
Thank you.